Soft radio static fades in. A calm, steady voice begins. I have a hole on my property, and it doesn't seem to have a bottom. The studio fell silent. For a moment, even the host forgot to breathe. February 1997. Another lonely night on Coast to Coast AM. And then came that voice. The man called himself Mel Waters. His tone was quiet, measured, but there was something about it. A weight behind every word, as if he had seen something he shouldn't have. Mel said his land, a few miles west of Ellensburg, Washington, held a mystery that defied all logic. In the middle of his property stood a perfectly round hole, lined with ancient stone. No echo, no wind, just darkness. Locals had used it for decades, dumping old furniture, broken machines, even dead animals. Yet nothing ever hit the bottom. No thud, no sound, just gone. Curious, Mel decided to measure it. He tied a fishing line, attached a weight, and began lowering it in. A kilometer passed, then 2, then 10. The line kept unspooling, endlessly, until it reached nearly 80,000 feet, almost 24 kilometers deep. Still, no tension, no bottom. When Mel shared his discovery on the radio that night, he wasn't looking for fame. He sounded almost afraid, like a man who had stumbled onto something forbidden. That single phone call would ignite one of the strangest mysteries in American folklore. A legend about a bottomless pit that swallows not just matter, but perhaps something much deeper. From that night on, the world would know its name. Mel's Hole. The sound of wind rises. A faint whistle echoes through emptiness. After that night on the radio, Mel's story spread like wildfire. People in Ellensburg swore they knew the place. They had seen the hole, thrown things into it, and watched them vanish into the dark. According to Mel, the pit wasn't new. Locals had been using it long before he bought the property. Farmers dumped broken tools and animal carcasses inside. Hunters said their dogs refused to go near it. One man claimed he had dropped an old refrigerator and never heard it hit anything. But there was one story that haunted Mel more than any other. A neighbor had thrown the body of his dead hunting dog into the hole. Days later, that same dog appeared, alive, roaming the edge of the property. It wore the same collar, the same scar above its eye. Mel didn't believe it at first, but when he saw the dog himself, his hands started shaking. The animal stared at him for a moment, turned, and disappeared into the woods. He never saw it again. From then on, Mel couldn't shake the feeling that the hole wasn't just a hole, that it might be a doorway. He said birds would circle above it, but never fly directly over. Radios lost their signal near the pit, strange pulses of static distorted recordings. Even the air around it felt heavy, thick, like it absorbed sound itself. Mel tried experiments. He lowered a bucket of ice, then pulled it back up. The ice was warm to the touch, yet it didn't melt. Another time, he lowered a tape recorder down the hole, hoping to catch echoes or vibrations. When he played it back, there was nothing but a low mechanical hum, a droning tone that made his head ache. Then came the strangest part. One night, Mel noticed a faint blue light rising from the hole, a glow that shimmered without a source, hovering above the darkness for a few seconds before fading away. He described it as something alive, but not of this world. The next day, his phone started ringing. Strangers asked to visit the site. Reporters, conspiracy hunters, government officials, all wanted to see the mysterious pit of Washington. But when Mel tried to lead them there, the road didn't look the same. Fences that hadn't been there before blocked the path. Signs appeared overnight. No trespassing. U.S. property. Mel said he felt a chill crawl up his spine. He realized that someone, or something, was watching the hole too. And if the stories were true, maybe it wasn't meant to be found again. The whistle of wind turns into deep static. From that moment, Mel's Hole stopped being a local curiosity and became a forbidden mystery, a place where science failed and fear began to take root. News of the pit spread far beyond Ellensburg. It crept through small towns, radio stations, and late-night diners. The kind of places where rumors grow roots. People swore they had seen lights above the ridge. Others claimed the ground trembled at night, as if something deep below was moving. Some said animals went missing. Cattle, dogs, even birds, vanished without a trace. Farmers began telling stories. One man said his radio turned on by itself whenever he drove near the ridge. Another swore that his truck engine died the moment he looked toward Mel's property. Soon, locals stopped saying Mel's Hole. They just called it the place you don't go after dark. A woman from the nearby town of Cleellum claimed she saw men in black uniforms near the site. They were digging, measuring, unloading strange equipment. When she tried to get closer, they told her to leave. By morning, they were gone. No tire tracks, no lights, nothing. Even stranger were the calls that began flooding Coast to Coast AM. Listeners from across the country said they had their own bottomless holes. Some in Nevada, some in Utah. Each story eerily similar. A pit that swallowed everything, and sometimes gave something back. Art Bell, the host, said he'd never seen anything like it. The phone line stayed lit for hours. People were frightened but fascinated, as if they could feel the pull of that darkness, even from hundreds of miles away. Mel tried to stay quiet. He said he didn't want attention, he just wanted answers. But the more he tried to disappear, the harder it became to stay hidden. His mailbox was broken open one morning, letters missing, the latch bent backward, like someone had forced it. A helicopter flew low over his property for hours, circling the same spot again and again. No markings, no insignia. And then, the visits started. Men in dark suits, calm voices, smiling without warmth. They asked polite questions about geology, ownership, recordings, then politely told him to stop talking about the hole. Mel said he felt like a bug under glass, watched, examined. He stopped sleeping near the property. He began staying in motels, moving from town to town. But everywhere he went, people whispered his name. They asked if the hole was real, if he had really seen the blue light, if the government had silenced him. He didn't know what to tell them anymore. Because at some point, even Mel wasn't sure what was real and what the hole wanted him to believe. The wind fades into a low hum, a sound almost like breathing. By then, Mel's Hole was no longer just a mystery. It was becoming a legend. A story people told each other in quiet tones, hoping it was just a story and fearing that it wasn't. For weeks, Mel tried to stay away from the property, but every time he left, he felt something pulling him back. He said the hole haunted him, not just in dreams, but in waking hours too. He'd catch himself staring into nothing, feeling that same weight, that same pressure, as if the darkness was calling his name. Then one morning, he decided to return. When he reached the ridge, the road was blocked. New fences, new warning signs, fresh tire marks in the dirt. A man in a beige uniform stepped out of a black SUV. No name tag, no insignia. He told Mel the area was now restricted. A safety hazard, he said. Something about unstable ground and radiation testing. Mel asked for proof. The man simply smiled. He told Mel to turn around and never come back. When Mel demanded to know who he worked for, the man's expression didn't change. He only said, "Mr. Waters, this is no longer your concern." That's when Mel realized something had changed. The land that was once his wasn't anymore. Later that week, he tried to show his deed to a county office. The clerk searched the records. There was no property listed under his name. No title, no record that Mel Waters had ever owned land in Kittitas County. It was as if he had been erased. Days later, a black van appeared outside his home. He saw two men sitting inside. No badges, no uniforms. They never spoke, never moved. They just watched. Then, one night, the van was gone. And so was Mel. For months, no one heard from him. His phone disconnected. His mailbox sealed. Neighbors said they thought he had left the country. Almost a year passed before anyone heard his voice again. He called into Coast to Coast AM once more. But this time, his tone was different. Calmer, quieter, like a man who had seen too much. He said he had been relocated, somewhere far away, outside the United States. He mentioned waking up in a military hospital with a wound on his arm he couldn't explain. The doctors told him he'd been found unconscious on the side of a dirt road near Tacoma. He said he remembered nothing. No van, no men, no hole. But as he spoke, his voice trembled. He said he still dreamed of that darkness, the endless fall, the whispering hum rising from below. Before Art Bell could ask more, the line went dead. Mel never called again. Some say he really was relocated, given a new identity, forced into silence. Others believe he found something in that hole, something that took him and never let him go. Either way, after that call, No one ever found him. And the land where Mel's hole was said to be was quietly fenced off, bought by a company no one had heard of, with no listed address and no trace of its owners. Whatever was buried there stayed buried. After Mel vanished, the legend refused to die. The story of a bottomless pit in Washington spread faster than ever. And soon, scientists began to take notice. At first, most dismissed it as a hoax, a tall tale born from the strange corners of late-night radio. But curiosity is a powerful thing, and even skepticism has its limits. Geologists from the State University in Washington started asking questions. They said a hole that deep, 24 kilometers, was impossible. At that depth, the heat and pressure would collapse any open space instantly. No natural formation could survive that. They compared Mel's claim to known drilling records. The deepest verified borehole on Earth, the Kola Super Deep borehole in Russia, reached only about 12 kilometers before the equipment melted from heat. Mel's number, twice that depth, simply couldn't exist. Others ran calculations. If the hole truly had no bottom, the air pressure alone would create violent suction, pulling in anything nearby. But witnesses said the air above Mel's hole was still, silent, unmoving. No one could make sense of that. A few researchers decided to search the area. They used satellite maps, geological surveys, old property records. Nothing matched Mel's description. No hole, no disturbance, no missing parcel of land. It was as if the place had been erased, not just from ownership, but from the earth itself. When local reporters tried to follow up, they found the same thing. No records, no coordinates, and no trace of Mel Waters ever living in the county. Some journalists called it proof that Mel was lying. Others whispered that maybe he wasn't. Maybe someone had made sure the evidence was gone. The Washington State Department of Natural Resources eventually issued a statement. They said there was no geological evidence of a bottomless pit anywhere near Ellensburg. They even sent a geologist named Jack Powell to speak publicly about it. He explained that if such a hole did exist, it would collapse under its own weight long before reaching a fraction of that depth. He called it geologically impossible. But there was something about his interview, the way he paused before certain words, the way his eyes shifted when asked about government involvement, that left people uneasy. He denied the legend, but his hesitation became part of it. Soon, conspiracy forums exploded. They claimed Powell had been told to keep quiet, that his statement was scripted, that Mel's hole was a classified site under military control. And while scientists argued over physics and geology, people kept talking about the same eerie details. The blue light, the strange hum, the dogs that vanished, the feeling of being watched. Science could explain the numbers, but not the fear. And fear, as it turned out, was harder to silence than any man. By the early 2000s, Mel's hole was everywhere. On message boards, radio reruns, late-night talk shows. It had become part of American folklore. People didn't just tell the story anymore. They added to it. Some said the hole could bend time, that objects dropped inside came back older, rusted, decayed beyond reason. Others claimed the hole was not man-made at all, but a remnant of something ancient, a scar left by forces that predated humankind. A few even whispered that it wasn't a hole at all, but the mouth of a tunnel that reached through dimensions, a gateway between this world and whatever lies beneath it. Pilgrims began to arrive in Ellensburg. Curious travelers, thrill seekers, self-proclaimed psychics carrying crystals and compasses. They asked locals for directions to the pit. Some were turned away. Others wandered the ridges for days, looking for a hole that no one could find. A cafe near Manastash Ridge even started selling coffee called Bottomless Blend. T-shirts appeared, souvenirs, tourists taking photos beside random sinkholes, pretending they had found the real thing. The legend was making money, but it was also growing teeth. A few people claimed they had gone missing while searching for it. One hiker's camera was found in the woods. The final photo a blur of light spiraling upward. Online, theories multiplied. Some believed the hole was a military experiment. Others said it was a portal, linked to the Kola borehole, to Area 51, even to the hollow earth. Every explanation only deepened the mystery. And somewhere in the noise, the truth, if it ever existed, disappeared completely. By 2005, researchers studying folklore called Mel's Hole, a perfect storm of fear, imagination, and technology. They said it was proof that myths no longer needed campfires. All they needed was a phone line, a radio frequency, and a story that refused to die. Even the skeptics admitted something strange. No one could trace the first recording of Mel's call. No official archive had it, not even Art Bell's station. It was as if the tape had never existed. And that, of course, only made the legend stronger. People began calling it America's bottomless mystery, a story that started with a single phone call and grew into something the whole world could fall into. Because in the end, it wasn't about a man or a hole. It was about what happens when a story digs deep enough to reach the part of us that still fears what's hiding underground. Years have passed since the last voice of Mel Waters was heard. The world moved on, but the echo of his story never stopped. Even now, people still talk about it. On late-night forums, in dimly lit bars, in whispered conversations between truck drivers and travelers crossing the ridge. They say, sometimes, when the wind blows from the west, you can hear it. A low hum, rising from nowhere. Some call it the sound of the earth breathing. Others say it's the voice of the hole itself, waiting for someone to answer. A few claim to have found it again. They post grainy photos of dark pits in forgotten valleys. No one can prove if they're real. No one can prove they're not. The legend has become like the hole it describes. Deep, endless, swallowing every truth thrown inside. And maybe that's why it endures. Because everyone has their own version, their own darkness they can't quite look away from. Perhaps Mel's Hole was never about geology or science. Perhaps it was about us. Our need to believe that some mysteries are too vast, too wild, too sacred to ever be explained. The story fades, the hum remains, and somewhere out there, beyond the ridges of Washington, the wind still carries a question. What if the hole is still listening?